one. I just want to ask, when agents are coming into the sport, do you see any disadvantages to an agent coming in?
Well, my only fear with the large contracts is that it could bankrupt the sport in a sense, because I do wonder, like with Paul, with this $10 million deal, and like if that's what outside agents, if they come in and like that's their scale because that's what they know and they're not super familiar with how financials and disc golf work to know that that's an unheard of deal, then like I just hope the manufacturers don't bite off more than they can chew, or else we could see companies go under because they're going to promise players money thinking we have to do this. I think manufacturers, seeing what is happening with Paul, they're going to start taking risks. They're going to start throwing out big contracts to guys like if Ricky were to go back on the market or whatever it might be, thinking, we're going to offer him this. We don't really have the money, but we think we can make it back because of the signing. And if it doesn't pay off, then we could see some trouble. So that's the only thing I wonder, is if manufacturers are going to get ahead of themselves, because agents aren't really going to understand, how the disc golf economy works. But other than that, I mean, and I don't even really think it's a real issue, because I think there'll always be somebody around to pick up the slack and to buy somebody out and to absorb somebody. Like, there's always going to be an entity selling plastic. So I don't really think that's an issue. Companies, as years go on and as the sport gets more popular, are going to, some of them will, die. Some of them will get absorbed, and some of them are just going to explode. And that's just going to be how it is. That's business.
Yeah.
So I'm all for it. I don't really think there's actually a con that could be devastating to the sport.
Yeah, I don't think there's a con that can be devastating. I think the only when I wrote this question, the only disadvantage I could think of was more to the lower level of the paid teams, if that makes sense. So like your lower level of Discraft's tour team, your lower level of like Prodigy's core team or whatever they call them.
Yeah.
These pros who are right now making some money, you know what I mean? And they're being able to live off of what they're making from their contract, and they're getting paid decently, but will be the first to go if a company needs to sign a big deal.
Right.
So like if Innova's looking at it and it's like, you know what? This agent's right. We're going to lose Rick if we can't sign him to a 5-year, $5 million deal.
Right.
And we need to trim the fat. We need to figure out where can we let some people go to make the cap space for this, essentially.
Well, it was almost like backwards thinking with having like all the small players signed. Like really, disc golf manufacturers need to have a couple big players signed.
Yeah. If you Paul and Paige, I would guarantee you, I do not know this for a fact, so do not take this as a fact, but I'm very confident in saying this, that I would bet Paul and Paige move plastic, just those two, probably move more plastic than the rest of the Tour Series, Elite Series, whatever they call them, team, that top team combined. I bet Paul and Paige move
easily, I think.
Probably way more plastic than those two combined.
When you consider the PM line, it's just not even close. And
so I think if you, realistically, I'm not advising they do this, but if Discraft basically just shifted more production time and more focus to Paul and Paige and got rid of the rest of their team, I would bet you they'd make the same amount or more money with just two top players.
I mean, I know there's a lot of like loyalty in that.
Yeah.
And that's obviously not going to happen, but I do think like...
And I don't think that's a good idea for the record. I'm not saying cut the Yuli, Ezra, all of them of the world. I think that's great additions to the team. I'm just saying strictly numbers wise.
Yeah.
These are the things that companies are going to realize.
I do think like once companies do get massive, they will be able to afford having larger teams and like lower level guys. But I think right now everybody needs to prioritize the biggest names in the sport.
Yeah.
Just how it is.
Yeah, and then that'll also, the lower part of the field, become the biggest name in the sport, or you're not going to get that payday. I mean, that's how it is in every other sport.
It's just going to be cutthroat.
Yeah.